I was sitting outside this Italian place my friends had picked, one hand on the steering wheel, the other on my phone, already thinking of a decent excuse. Food poisoning. Overtime. Flat tire. Something boring enough that nobody would argue with it. I was 23, working a job I didn't hate but definitely didn't care about, and still doing that stupid thing where you tell everybody you're fine after a breakup until even you almost believe it. Almost. The truth was, I still thought about my ex way more than I admitted. Not in some dramatic way. It was worse than that. It was in stupid little routine moments. Walking past the snack aisle she liked. Hearing a song she used to hum under her breath. Reaching for my phone after work and remembering there was nobody I actually wanted to text. So a blind date felt less like hope and more like a chore. I went in anyway because my friends had already made the reservation, and I knew if I bailed they'd keep at me for another month. The hostess took me to a small table near the window. I sat down, ordered water, checked the door twice in the first minute, and immediately knew I'd made a mistake. Then I saw her. At first it was just a familiar profile a few tables over. Dark dress. Hair pinned up. Nice earrings. One hand around a wine glass she barely touched. Then she turned a little, and it hit me all at once. It was my ex-girlfriend's mother. I hadn't seen her since the breakup. Back when I was dating her daughter, she'd always been good to me in a way I never really forgot. She'd ask if I'd eaten. She'd remember things I said. She had this calm way of making room for me in that house, even on nights when her daughter was irritated, distracted, or picking a fight over nothing. I used to think of her as the only person there who saw me clearly. And now she was sitting alone in a packed restaurant, dressed like this night mattered. I looked around before I looked back at her. Empty chair. No coat on the other side of the table. No second drink. No half-finished conversation. Just her checking her phone, locking it, setting it face down, then lifting her chin like she could outweigh embarrassment through posture alone. A server came by and asked if she wanted to order. She smiled that tight polite smile people use when they're trying not to fall apart in public and said, "I'm just waiting on someone." That was when I knew. A couple at the next table had noticed too. Then a group near the bar. You can feel it when a room starts building a story around somebody. That low sideways attention. That pity people pretend isn't pity. My actual date still hadn't shown up, and suddenly I didn't care if she ever did. I got up before I could think too hard about how insane it was. She looked up when I stopped at her table. For half a second, she just stared at me like I was the last person she expected to see. Then I said, "I'm so sorry. Parking was a nightmare." Her eyes widened. Mine probably did too, because I had absolutely no plan beyond that sentence. But she was smart. She understood fast. "Oh," she said after the smallest pause. "There you are." I pulled out the chair across from her and sat down like I belonged there. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Up close, I could see the damage the evening had already done. Her makeup was still neat, but her hands were shaky. She kept pressing her thumb into the side of her glass like she needed something steady to hold on to. "I hope you haven't been waiting long," I said. She gave me a look that was half gratitude, half disbelief. "Not too long." The people who'd been watching lost interest almost immediately. Problem solved. Story corrected. Late man arrives. Nothing to see. It should have ended there. I should have stayed 10 minutes, helped her save face, then found some normal way for both of us to leave. But then a guy near the bar said, way too loudly, "About time, man." A few people laughed. And I saw it happen on her face. That tiny flash of humiliation again. Not gone. Just covered. Something in me snapped. I reached into my jacket pocket and felt the ring box I'd forgotten was there. It wasn't what people would think. A friend at work had been selling old jewelry for his aunt, and I'd agreed to look at one piece for my sister because she liked vintage stuff. I'd picked it up that afternoon and never took it out of my pocket. I don't know what possessed me. I stood, walked around the table, and held out my hand. She stared up at me, confused. Then I dropped to one knee right there beside her chair. The whole front half of the restaurant went silent so fast it felt fake. Her lips parted. "What are you doing?" Quietly, so only she could hear, I said, "Trust me." Then louder, with every eye in the room on us, I opened the box and said, "I think I've kept you waiting long enough." A few people gasped. Somebody near the window actually clapped a hand over their mouth. She looked at the ring. Then at me. I could see her trying to catch up, trying to decide if I'd completely lost my mind. Maybe I had. But then her expression changed. Just a little. The panic gave way to understanding. Then something softer. Something almost painful. Her hand rose to her mouth. "Yes," she said. The room exploded. People started clapping. A woman near the door cheered. Somebody was already filming. I slid the ring onto her finger with hands that were way less steady than I wanted anyone to notice, and when she stood up, she leaned in close enough to whisper, "You are out of your mind." "Yeah," I whispered back. "I know." 5 minutes later we were outside in the night air, the restaurant buzzing behind us, both of us standing on the sidewalk like we'd just set a match to our lives and were waiting to see what caught first. The next morning I woke up to 14 missed calls, a dead group chat exploding back to life, and 3 different people sending me the same video. It was me, on one knee outside the restaurant, holding up a ring box like I had planned the whole thing for months instead of making the worst impulsive decision of my life in under 10 seconds. By the time I got out of bed, the video had already spread past anybody I actually knew. Friends were sending laughing voice notes. Coworkers were asking why I never mentioned I was engaged. 2 people I hadn't spoken to since high school had messaged me congratulations like we were close. My stomach dropped harder every time I opened my phone. Then her name lit up my screen. I stepped outside my apartment building before I answered. "Hey." Her voice was controlled, but just barely. "We need to talk in person." "Yeah," I said. "Definitely." We met at a small coffee shop across town, one neither of us usually went to. She was already there when I walked in, sitting in the corner with sunglasses on even though it was cloudy outside. The ring was still on her hand. That somehow made everything feel worse. When I sat down, she looked at me for a second like she still couldn't decide whether I had saved her or ruined her life. "I didn't sleep," she said. "Me neither." She pushed her phone across the table. The video was open again. Hundreds of comments. Hearts. Strangers calling it beautiful. Strangers calling me brave. Strangers building a love story out of a panic move and a public disaster. "I could tell the truth," she said quietly. "I could say I was stood up, and my daughter's ex-boyfriend took pity on me." Neither of us said anything for a moment after that. Because that was the truth. And hearing it out loud made it sound even uglier. "She doesn't know yet?" I asked. "She knows something happened," she said. "Not everything." She took off the sunglasses, and I could see how tired she was. "If this gets explained the wrong way, it won't just be embarrassing. It'll follow me. People love a story when it turns cruel." I knew she was right. The proposal video made her look chosen. The truth would turn her back into the woman sitting alone at a table while half a restaurant watched her get left there. "So what do we do?" I asked. She stared down at her coffee. "We keep it simple. For a little while." I leaned back. "You mean pretend it's real?" "For a few weeks," she said quickly. "Until people lose interest. No interviews. No long explanations. If anyone asks, we say we've been seeing each other privately and wanted to keep it quiet. I actually laughed once, not because it was funny but because the whole thing had gone so far past normal that my brain didn't know what else to do. That sounds insane. It is insane, she said. But it's less insane than the truth. I couldn't argue with that. So that was the deal. A few weeks. Stay consistent. Keep the story small. Survive the fallout. End it quietly later. It should have felt cold and practical. Instead, once the plan was out in the open, something shifted. We stopped talking like two people trapped in a scandal and started talking like two people who actually had to know each other. I learned she'd been lonely for a lot longer than I realized. Not just recently. Years. The kind that settles into a person slowly until even being disappointed starts to feel normal. She told me she'd nearly canceled that dinner 3 times before going. She said getting dressed had felt stupid halfway through, like she was playing a role she'd already aged out of. You didn't look stupid, I said. She looked up at me then, and for a second neither of us moved. You really didn't, I added, quieter. She smiled, but it was different from her public smile. Smaller. Real. Then she asked about me, and I told her more than I expected to. About work. About how empty my apartment had felt after the breakup. About how I kept pretending I was past it because saying otherwise made people uncomfortable. About how being left by her daughter hadn't even been the worst part. The worst part was how easy it seemed for her to move on while I kept dragging pieces of it around like loose weight. She listened the way she always had. Fully. No rushing. No fixing. By the time we left, we had our cover story mostly straight, but what stayed with me wasn't the lie. It was how easy it had been to sit there with her. After that, we kept meeting because we had to. At least that was the excuse. One afternoon we went over what to say if family asked about dates and timelines. Another time we met in a grocery store parking lot because she didn't want to talk on the phone with her daughter in the house. Once we even had to walk into a small family dinner together because backing out would have looked suspicious. I put my hand lightly on her back when we went inside, and the strange part wasn't that other people believed it. The strange part was how natural it felt. The worst moments were when we had to perform. The easiest ones were the 10 minutes after, sitting in my car or hers, when neither of us talked right away. The line between the lie and reality was disappearing. If you're enjoying this story, hit like and subscribe for more. One evening, after a long, awkward dinner where we'd smiled too much and explained too little, she let out this tired breath and rested her head back against the seat. I forgot what it was like, she said. What? To not feel alone walking into a room. I turned and looked at her. She kept staring through the windshield, like she hadn't meant to say it out loud. And that was the first moment I really understood we weren't just managing a lie anymore. Because the only part of this fake engagement that felt easy, was us. Everything got harder the day her daughter found out. Not from the internet. Not from strangers. From one of those family chain leaks where somebody tells somebody who tells the wrong person at the exact wrong time. I was at work when she called me, and I knew from the first second something had gone bad. She knows, she said. I stepped out behind the building near the dumpsters because it was the only quiet place. Did you tell her? No. My sister did. Or half told her. I'm not even sure. Her voice was tight, controlled the way it got when she was trying not to crack. She's coming to the house. I closed my eyes. Do you want me there? A pause. No. Yes. I don't know. In the end I went, which was probably a mistake and also the only real option. By the time I pulled up, her daughter's car was already there. Mine felt ridiculous parked behind it. The second I walked in, I knew I was walking into a fire. Her daughter was in the kitchen, arms folded, face red in that sharp, angry way I remembered too well. The second she saw me, she laughed once, but there was nothing funny in it. "You've got to be kidding me,"